All right, so we're talking about Google Sites today. And Google Sites are another one of these great free tools that Google offers. And you guys all have Google accounts, whether you know it or not. They come with your Brevard.edu access. You've got a Gmail account. Your Gmail account includes access to Docs, Drive, all the stuff that we've kind of talked about this last month. And Google Sites is one of those as well. So what is a Google site? It's really just a simple website, and you can make it for free. You can add lots of content. You can actually control sharing. So unlike some websites, once you make them public, they're public. This one you can actually make available to only a limited number of people. You can actually have contributors and collaboration when it comes to these sites, so more than one person can work on a site together at the same time. The same way that you can do that with Google Docs and Google Slides. All these products that Google makes, there really is kind of a general theme of being collaborative and having control over the access that you can provide to people.
So just like Google Docs, where you can just have a limited amount of sharing,
Yep.
you do the same thing for your website.
Yep, and the sharing works basically the same way. I mean, you can choose to share it within your organization, outside the organization, with certain people. You can then control who can actually do what. So if you share it with specific people, you can give them editing privileges. You can change ownership. All of these controls are built into Google Sites, which is kind of nice because with a regular website, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. Once you make it public, it's pretty much public unless you've got, a really fancy CMS, which it's hard to come by and they're expensive. So for being free, this is really nice.
Yeah, Ryan, I'll give you an example for our teacher ed. We can share them with the state, and then we can archive them, and then we can break apart, our students do them, and then they take their part, we totally separate, and they can add stuff to it, and it'll never change the record that we archive. So it's really cool, and we can just, when the state evaluators come, we can just give them a special access and then cut it off when they leave, so.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool too.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can control all that sort of stuff. It's really good for the access piece. It really works well with Google stuff too. So again, like all the things you make in Google Drive, if you make a doc or a slide or you upload a video to Google Drive, you can very easily place those items in a Google site. Just insert and it makes it just super simple. It's a few clicks and you've got a video in there. It's a few clicks and you've got a slide in there. You really don't even have to use embed codes, which I'll have a workshop later on this next month about embed codes, but this makes it even easier. The embedding is almost non-existent for basically all Google products. It does work with other products too, but because this is a Google site, they really assure that it's going to work really seamlessly with other Google products, which I use a lot, so it works well for me. And if you use Google stuff like YouTube or, again, any of the Drive products, then it should be a pretty good fit for you. So why would you do this? Because, you do have to have a reason to want to make a site. I'll show you a few examples later of some sites that I've made, but what do you guys think? Is any of this feel like it would be a practical use? Any other ideas as to why you might want a website? Any thoughts? Why did you guys come here today? What was your reason for wanting to learn how to make a site?
I'm
Was
getting
told she uses them and I need to help her.
She does use them. She uses them for e-portfolios a lot
Okay.
because of her teacher's ed stuff. What did you guys come here for? Shelley, what do you think?
Well, I have a little experience with web design and stuff, but it was really learning about Google's version that made me want to come here. But in terms of this job, I think about websites as information portals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just ways to package a whole lot of access points where they're easily seeable and findable.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, I've got a Google site that you'll see in a bit that I use just to. I've created a space for information on digital media and just kind of how to use videos, how to use images, and it was a lot of stuff. So I didn't want to put all that into my Brevard because I have a space in my Brevard. I can make pages there too, but what I wanted to do was create a separate space that's a little bit more detailed about these things, and I didn't want to overwhelm people in the space of my Brevard. So I created a link from my Brevard to this Google site, and I've got a nice big button. People click on it and they can go to what I call my EdTech toolbox, and you'll get to see that in a little bit. But that's a great example. It's the same kind of thing. If you guys had a whole bunch of information you wanted to provide from the library's perspective about something, but it's a little bit too much to put on My Brevard, a Google site might be a good option to create and put all your information and organize it there. Any other? How'd you come?
Well, I want to learn as much as I can, period.
Yeah.
It's just me. But I'm actually getting certified as a health and wellness coach.
Ah,
And I
cool.
would like to create a site that does what Betsy does, where it's only for my clients.
Nice.
And that they can interact with their assessments and summaries and things like that.
Nice. And one of the things you can do, as I've got here, is collect certain types of information. So because it works so well with Google Forms, if you want to have your clients actually send you pieces of information, you can really easily specify in a Google form what kind of data you want to collect, embed that directly in your site, and just have a page for the information you want to collect from people.
And we haven't done the forms yet, have we? Did I miss that one?
We have not done
Okay.
forms yet. No, they're pretty straightforward though. I mean, we're going to have a workshop on forms at some point, but that's just a good thing to think about if you ever want to collect information about people you're sharing the site with or have them send you feedback. Embedding a form is a really good way to do that. Any other thoughts on why you wanted to learn how to make a site today? Just generally interested?
One from the Alumni Affairs Office.
Cool.
So I think we were maybe seeing how we can better take like alumni stories and also share those, and
Yeah.
maybe have a site that they can access that's easier than what we have like with My Brevard.
Yeah, cool. Definitely. Let's keep looking at some examples now, because I think this might bring it home a little bit. These sites, because they're free, they're not going to be the most beautiful, complex things, but you can do pretty good things with them. This is a really text-heavy site. This is my e-portfolio for my graduates, so Betsy's over there smiling because it's a
Kotsky.
yeah, big Bukowski quote at the top there. So it's really focused professionally on like my world. This is what I had to create for grad school before I could finish up my program. But it's got a lot of content. All these pages are linked. I've got sub-pages with sub-pages. So, you can build out a pretty complex site if you want to and provide lots of information to people, and it can be organized pretty well. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here, but I do feel like it's pretty easy to find once you want to get to something. And it's all, maintained on the sidebar here too. So imagery, these are all images that I've uploaded right into the site. You can do things with lines. I mean, you have to get a little bit creative sometimes because it's not like some of these other sites that you can build now that are proprietary, like Squarespace. If you guys have ever heard of Squarespace or Wix, you can build these templated websites and they make them look really pretty, and they've got a lot of things that, kind of do that for you. You got to do some of these things yourself and kind of think about what you want it to look like, but it can all generally be done. Okay, so this is one example. Let's look at just the general information. This is my EdTech toolbox. Again, I've got this linked from My Brevard, and you can see it's a drastically different looking site, right? We can make these look very different from one another. They don't all need to look the same. There's themes you can pick from, there's templates you can choose from. You can start with a blank page and just kind of build it yourself. So we've got this site here, and if you scroll down, got some nice icons here to make it easy to see what people are going to look for. These icons I made with a tool called Canva, and I'm going to do another workshop on how to make these kinds of images at some point. But, there's my header image right there off the top. Any other of these you might have noticed from various emails. But, this is where I make them. And it's a very straightforward tool. So when you want to use images on a site, if you've got an image, it's easy. If you don't have the image, we're going to talk more about how to make those later on, or you can just come talk to me and we can find them. But it is doable. I just kind of want you guys to see what the possibilities are here. Embedding video is pretty straightforward too. So we've got a lot of videos here. All this stuff can be done, and you'll notice that because I'm signed in as the editor, I can edit this anytime I want. I can come back and make changes, and that's the nice thing too. Remember, with a website, if you give it out to somebody, what if you screwed up and you messed up a link? you don't have to resend the site to people. You just need to go back and fix the link. And when they go to that site the next time, it's going to be fixed for them too. So because it's a website, you know, it's not like a Word document. You've made a mistake, you have to resend the Word document. They've already got it. It's pushed out as soon as you fix it. Let's take a look at one more example here. And we're actually going to come back to this last example and play with it towards the end of the class here and start looking in the back end of the site. So this is another site I made yesterday, literally yesterday. That tells you how long it can take you once you get pretty comfortable with it. I even made all these icons yesterday. So it's, you know, the idea for me is to find tools that I can really learn how to use that are simple, that do what I need to do. And when you master these really simple tools, you'll be amazed at the kind of things you can create with the combination of all these skills. Kind of just adding another tool to your tool belt. So I just made this for whatever. This is just a website about me. If I click on one of these, you're going to see some videos about things I do. I even can embed Instagram feeds. This is done with a Google Gadget. So you can do fun things even though it's not really obvious, and you won't see a place on the site editor where it just says embed your Instagram feed. You've got to do a little bit more work to do that. But if you can think of it, somebody else has probably thought of it and they probably made a way to do it. And so what I did here, and the same thing for my Twitter feed, was I created, well, I have my Twitter feeds and I have my Instagram feeds already made, right? So I did a Google search. I said, how can I embed my Instagram or my Twitter site into a Google site? And what do you know? There's somebody who's made what's called a Google Gadget. And anybody can make these. They're sort of these open source sites, so people can make things that plug into them. And I grab the code from this guy who's already made it, and I plug it into my site and make a few tweaks, and all of a sudden I've got an embedded Twitter feed. So if I send out a new tweet, it's going to show up on this page automatically. I don't need to come back to this page and do anything. It's just going to be here. The same for the Instagram.
What about Facebook?
Facebook probably has a similar option. I don't have Facebook, so I didn't have an embedded feed to provide, but that's all pretty cool. And I don't know if for alumni affairs if you guys could, you know, utilize embedded feeds like this, but it'd be pretty neat.
Could you embed like a store, like an Etsy store? Or would you have to just like link that?
It's possible that you can embed an Etsy store because Etsy does do embedding. I know my wife does craft stuff and has an Etsy shop, and so she has embedded her Etsy shop into other websites. And I'm betting that if you can embed it in other websites, there's probably a code you can get to embed it in a Google site too. Google does use pretty standard HTML, so if they're giving you an HTML embed code, it generally will work in Google sites. There's some exceptions to that, but it almost always does. But like I said, this is actually a little bit different. This is a gadget, which I can show you a little bit later, but just know that it can be done, and if you're not sure if it can be done, Google it, because it is a Google site. I mean, you know they're going to put the results they want you to see at the top for their sites, right?
My experience with Facebook is that it's a little wonky. I'm not on Instagram or Twitter, but I have used Tumblr in the past. And basically you have to look at the settings of both apps.
Yep.
So I started by going into my Tumblr and saying I want this to connect to this particular Facebook. But then, and I had to check like every month to make sure that all the settings remained the same, because they would sometimes
Facebook
start
changes
telling
stuff.
people when
Yeah.
I liked an image on Tumblr, which I didn't really want.
Yeah, there's a little bit of back and forth there. Obviously, you're taking one tool and you're asking it to communicate with another tool, and you're asking that other tool to accept communication from this other tool. So if one of them changes just a little bit, sometimes it can throw it off, but you know, if you're keeping up with it and you check once a month or something, you'll probably recognize pretty quickly that something broke that you need to fix. These are not just make them and leave them. You know, websites, a lot of people think they can just set them up and go away and never have to touch it again, but they are kind of living, breathing things, and things in the environment that they sit in change. Website sits there, but it's opened by a browser, and if that browser gets updated, but your website is no longer working with that update that the browser put out, you might have an issue. So things to keep in mind, but not huge deals. Generally, they kind of fix themselves. Google will make an update, and then it now works with that browser. But if you see it, you can try to look for the fix and go from there. But just remember that your website, once you make it, you do have to kind of maintain it just like everything else. You don't want it to just sit there and wither away and look dated after too long. It will if you let it sit there, because things change on the internet pretty quickly. This is an example of an embedded form. So this is a Google form that I made, and you can see it's just sitting really well in the site, and anybody who enters this information in here, I'll get notified by email, and I can go back and grab all the data I want to grab and use it for whatever I want to use it for. And that's it. So any questions about these examples before I move on? Thoughts? So let's go on to the next slide here before we get into more stuff. So to start with a site, it really is pretty straightforward to get started. Sites.google.com. You can also access, once you're logged into your Gmail account, you click on the little 9 squares. It's in those apps as well. So there's a few different ways you can get to it, but to get there directly, sites.google.com. And if you're not logged in, it'll prompt you to log in, and then you log in and you're good to go. At that point, when you click on the Create button, you get a choice of whether you want to choose a template, you want to choose a theme, or leave it blank. It doesn't really matter at that point. You can always go back and update this later on. So if you choose a blank site to begin with, and then later you want to add a template to it, or you want to add a theme, you can still do that. It will just overwrite any of the design changes you made and add that theme. So don't feel like you're stuck with what you pick here. Just know that you can pick it here. Later on, if you want to change it, you can change it. At this point, it's not really mandated. Like, Google is not going to take you through a setup process at any point. Once you make the site, it's just there. But the next thing I really recommend you doing after you've set up your theme to get started is to set the access that you want to have. Because at first, it's going to be wide open. And if you make it on Brevard's network, it's actually going to be wide open for anybody to edit, which you want to fix pretty quickly. So the next thing I would do is go in to manage your sharing access and set it. While you're working on it, I like to set it to private. I don't need anybody to find it while it's in this construction mode that I'm building it out in. But once you're ready, you can go back and change that and make it available to whoever you want to make it available to. Or, likewise, if you're having somebody work on it with you, if you've got a collaborator, go ahead and set it so that only that person can access and edit, and it's just going to be the 2 of you or the 3 of you or whatever. And then when you're ready, you can make it public. But just know that when you first create this site, it is going to be accessible, and it's going to be editable to anybody who actually finds it. Not many people are going to find it, but if they do, they could. So good thing to just go ahead and set that access up the right way. Okay. The next part is just really designing and adding your content. There's a little more to it, obviously, than just throw content in your website. If you want to have buttons, you need to make your buttons first. If you want those buttons to link to other pages, you kind of need to have those pages built out before you're going to be able to link to them. Typically, what you're going to do at this point, if you're really thoroughly designing your website, you're going to make a wireframe. Really not necessary at this level to create a wireframe, but it is helpful. I mean, at best, you might just map out the pages you want to have and kind of think about where they're going to link to and from. Do you want a horizontal navigation? Do you want a side navigation? Do you want no navigation? Do you just want a single page? These are the kinds of things you might want to think about, and the purpose of your site might really help define what kind of content you're going to put on there too. You don't want anything unnecessary. You don't want pretty pictures of your dogs on there if your goal is to sell things, because you're just going to distract them from the things they're trying to sell. So keep that stuff in mind.
When you say the word wireframe, is that just the kind of design?
Wireframe is just sort of like a map of the pages and where they direct you to within your site.
Kind of like doing a storyboard.
Kind of like a storyboard for a video. Yeah, it's really just kind of visually and texturally mapping out what you're going to be using this website for. Every single click and every single page. They can get really crazy for some of these big websites. But it's like everything else. The people that do these things professionally, they make those wireframes before they build anything. They are not going to even start creating a page until they know that that page is the one they're going to need. with you guys, I mean, I encourage you to actually play around and make some mistakes and you know, have fun with it, because, you know, you're not building a Google site to, you know, support some kind of multinational corporation or anything, or to sell, you know,
That you
Nike
know of.
shoes. Not that I mean, if you did, I assume you're not in this room for that, but maybe, who knows, because possibilities are endless, right? But yeah, I mean, keep that in mind. You can do a whole lot of planning, and it can get a little daunting, and I do recommend you do some. You know, sketch out a little bit, or at least kind of think about it in your mind first, because you'll start to drive yourself a little nuts with all the edits that you make if you don't, but it's not 100% necessary. You can kind of create things and change them as you go along. It's all editable. So there's a few of my tips here. Wireframes, again, they're great, but they're not needed, so don't worry too much about them. If you start to look up things on the internet about how do I make a website, one of the first things they're going to tell you is you need to build a wireframe. I'm telling you that for simple stuff, it might be a little more than you need. Again, so make some mistakes, and then you learn. And then you make more mistakes, and then you learn from those mistakes. I mean, that is how you learn in these situations. There's only so much I can tell you up here about how to do this. And if you want to figure something out, a Google search is generally going to tell you what you need, but I'm always here too. You've got resources at the college. Chili. You've got resources here, so don't be afraid to use them, but don't be afraid to make a mistake and just try things. You really won't break anything too bad, I promise. You're not going to cause damage and take down our network or anything like that. It is a free tool. So you guys heard the term wonky before? It's one of my favorite terms.
It's a definition of
Yeah,
not
yeah.
wonky.
It could be a little bit wonky. Like there are times where you want it to be centered or you want it to be a certain size, and it's just like it's not doing exactly what you want. But again, remember, this thing is free. So it's not going to be perfect, but it is free. And there are some things that I can show you where if you do make some mistakes, you can kind of clear it and go back to the starting board. Or there is a revision history, just like you have in Google Docs. You can go back and see the revisions you've made and just sort of go back to a previous date or previous time. If you really kind of like what you had at 10 o'clock in the morning and you did a few things and now it's really screwed up, you can go back to your revision history and say, I want it back to what it was like at 10 when I made that first edit earlier. So know that,
That's a very,
That's
very
wonderful,
useful
isn't it?
thing.
yes. Like I said, Google it. They're going to have a lot of your answers for that. Cool. So let's play with this other site a little bit, and I want to just show you guys around the back end of this. So here's the home page, and maybe I can even start back at the Google Sites here. This is sites.google.com. This is what you'll come to once you log in. I've got a whole list of my sites here that I have created or had editing access to for one reason or another. You can see I've been playing a lot with education portfolios for Betsy over there. But they're all here. So once you make them, they're going to show up in your list. My sites. When you create your site, it's the big red create button. Again, like I said, you can make it blank. You give it a name, and you can select a theme. You can add categories so that it can be searchable. You really don't need to. That's totally optional. When you go to look for themes, or I should say templates, themes, let me clarify, will do things like colors and backgrounds. Templates are a little bit more engaged, or a little bit more involved. They can really set up pages for you, whereas a theme is not going to add pages. A theme is just going to give you the site so that every page you add is sort of the same. A template is going to have a whole bunch of pre-built out pages with space for you to just fill in with your own content.
Kind of like my Brevard was, right? Like when Michael did our central scheduling page, he went in and was like, I want a column here, here, and I want here, and then you just go in and fill in the information.
Yeah, that's a little bit more like a template at that point. You'll see that these are the ones in the Brevard site. So these are templates we've made at Brevard for our students for one reason or another. And then we've got public templates that other people have made outside of Brevard, and you can then use them. They're sort of broken down into different categories here. So personal websites, things like that. But remember, these are going to have all the pages already built. So if you really don't think you're going to need all the pages that are included on a template, it might be best to start with a theme and build your pages as you need them. Otherwise, you're going to actually have to go in and delete a bunch of stuff that's included in these templates before you're going to really have it looking the way you want it. This site started off as a template, and then I realized I didn't like a lot of it, and I made a whole bunch of edits, and it really looks nothing like the template it started with. So just keeping in mind, I mean, templates are great, but I almost feel like themes are going to give you a little bit more space to kind of create it as your own.
When we started ours, we were playing, everybody else went with a task stream, and these very expensive programs when they said that all the teacher ed programs had to have e-portfolios. But we let the students start their own and make their own themes, and they were just, you know, leaves and flowers and stuff. So we figured, but we wanted that because we wanted them to really, part of it was learning how to do it because when they go to the schools, they can help their own students make. And we figured just you go do whatever because this is play. And then we realized, well, there's evaluators that are going to come in, and the purpose for this, so I guess purpose is the main thing. One purpose is, this main purpose for us was to be evaluated by state outside evaluators. So we quickly went to a template. And then when we separate it from it, and we put everything, this is all your evidence, so it's very simple and very, very basic and unexciting. And they kind of get upset because they want to put your personality in it. We say, okay, but once you walk away, you get a new Google site, you take it with you, and then you can put all the puppy dogs and pictures or whatever, but we gotta have it basic,
Yeah,
or it'll
that's
confuse our evaluators.
And this is a really good reason to use a template, though, because you need the consistency.
Yeah.
So all those pages are built, students go to that page, they fill in the content. That's what a template's really designed to do. It makes it easy to just put content in a place that it's built for. But if it's something where you're not really sure you're going to need all those places, again, I think a theme might be better for those uses. Yeah. So let's go ahead and, well, we'll do this. I'll create a basic one here just to show you. You do need to name it.
Did you choose a theme or a template?
This is just a theme. So it's creating my site. And once it finishes creating, it'll just be a very basic blank space. Okay. So now if I want new pages, I have to add them. If I want colors outside of what's in the theme, I have to add them. If I want new images, I have to add them. A theme is going to provide a lot of these things for you, but again, you have to then decide if you want to use it, otherwise you're going to have a bunch of filler stuff. So adding new pages is as simple as clicking on the Create Page button. Once you create your pages, you can organize them, so don't feel like you have to know exactly where that page is going to fit on your navigation. I think by default it doesn't even show up in your navigation. You have to then go place it in there. So again, remember that you're not going to do any damage here. Play and see what you can do. But here's the Create Page button at the top. Create a new page, give it a name. Say we want to make a contact page. We can put it at the top level, underneath the top level, but I generally leave things at the top. You see this option there? You saw it there, it said change URL. Quick side note, you can create custom URLs for these Google sites, but just like every other custom URL, you have to buy the domain name. So that's the part that's not free. Domain names are not and probably will never be free. They're like buying a piece of real estate, basically, on the internet so that you can send people to it. Your Google site is going to have whatever the URL is that you created in the name sort of tacked onto the end of sites.google.com/Brevard. Then it'll be your name. So the URL is not going to be pretty by any means. If you want a pretty URL, you can buy it, and then you can associate it with this site and have people that go to that URL redirect to that site. That's easy. And I can help you with that if that's ever something you want to do, but it is not something that's included in the Google Sites tool. Chili, you got a weird look on your face over there.
It's really not important. I can ask you later.
Okay. So, a couple things to keep in mind here too. When you get a page created, you're now in this edit mode here. I could just type directly on the page and it's going to show up when I save it, just as plain text. If I want to do anything else with this text, I can highlight it and just use my editor the same way I would edit any other text. If I want to link this text, there's a link button, and I just have to tell it where to go. Now the cool thing here is I can actually link to other pages in the site instead of linking to an external website. So if you build out pages and you want to link to them within your site, it's as easy as just picking the page. You don't even have to use the URL. So this can take us back to the home page. And once I save it, you'll see that that's how it's going to work. Home. Contact. Back to home.
Okay.
Now, one other thing to notice on the page is that I've got some weird things here. People can add comments, people can add files, what's all this stuff? This is in your page setup. Every page you create, kind of by default, is going to have those things, but when you go to this little gear option, you've got all kinds of tools over here. Page settings. If we remove all those, then you'll notice that these things go away and it's now very basic.
I have a newbie question, sorry. So when you created that page and it moved it over to the left, is that your navigation tool then?
This is my navigation. Yep. Now, in terms of managing that navigation, you have, aside from managing each page, you have a site layout option. So you can edit all of your layout pieces. Do I want this navigation? If not, I can remove it. If I like it, I can edit it. I can edit this piece too, whether or not I want it on the left or right. So there's lots of options here. If I want to edit the header, I can do that too. I can use a custom logo like I did on my other site. So I created a logo, basically Doug's Digital Media Toolbox, Doug's Big Adventures, whatever it was. I upload that logo and now it's at the top of every single page on my site. That's how you make your little banner image. We can add a footer by clicking custom footer, and then we can edit it. We can remove the custom footer. We can get rid of our sidebar, which is over here, and we can add a horizontal navigation if we like that better at the top.
So everything that you add would just go
Mm-hmm.
across?
I can add pages to the top. Now if I want to edit my horizontal nav to include my contact page, I just tell it to include my contact page. Add a page to the horizontal navigation. I don't want you to get too caught up in trying to follow every single click. I just want you to kind of know that these things are possible so that when you get back to your desk to do these things, you can remember, oh yeah, I can do that. How do I do it again? And if you can't remember, there's a help center in Google Sites. You can figure it out and it's all there. I can even change the style. If I don't like these links, I can make them boxes or tabs. I mean, there's lots of things you can do. So play around, have fun, do all that stuff. Let's look at this page that's a little bit more built out and kind of play with something that's already done, because I think that helps a lot. One of the first things I told you to do, right, was manage your access. You can do that a couple different ways. You can go to Manage Site, and it will give you an option there, or you can just click on the Share button, and that's going to take you to the Sharing and Permissions section of your site management. So right now I have it set up that anyone who has the link to the site can view it, but they cannot edit that site. Only I can edit it. If I want to add another editor, I'll pick on Chili, because I know he's in there. I can let Chili edit this site, and now he's going to get notified, and he'll have a link to come back in here and actually edit as well. Now, if Chili does something silly and I don't like it, and I'm tired of having Chili edit my site,
Silly Julie.
I can then make him a viewer and save that. Now he can no longer edit my site.
Yeah, but if he's already messed it up,
I can go back to my revision history though, right? I go back to my revision, I say, I'm going to take away everything Chili did and go back to what I liked.
Would
Yeah,
you show us the revision history?
sure. Because I want to show you the help option now, and I can't remember how to go back. I actually did just a search for revert to, and automatically comes up with revert to earlier versions of your page, and it tells you exactly where to go. So you actually have to be on the page that you want to revert back to, and then looks like there's a settings option and revision history on the page, and then I can revert to that version. So even me, I forget things, and I use the help, and then I learn, and it doesn't take too long. Okay, so we've looked at sharing and permissions. We've looked at revision history a little bit. We already kind of talked about page settings. Remember I said you can change these pages later on. You can change the templates if you like something else. Manage site is going to give you most of the tools you want here. Between general and sharing permissions, you've got a lot of options, and then right below you've got all your themes. So if I want to change this theme to something else, I can preview them here and then decide if I like them or not. That's a different theme. I'll try something a little more obvious. There we go. So that changes the whole look, right? And you can just kind of get a nice preview of what you're doing from your managed site area before you do it.
What's that trail though?
That's in DuPont. Yeah. Okay, so there's our themes. To edit this page, again, just click on the edit. And on this page, I've got a bunch of images, and you'll see that they're all linked to other pages. So if I wanted to link to a different page, I would pick a different page and change that. But all of these images are linked, and this is a pretty straightforward page. If I like the name, I can leave it. If I want to change it to home, just change it to home, save. And then I would need to change the name in the navigation too. But now if I change this page setting to show my title, it would show the title as home. Okay. Any questions so far about things you can and can't do? There's a lot here, and I don't want to bog us down too much because we only got about 15 more minutes, and I can't talk about every single thing. But that's why we have a great help center with Google.
And where's the help center?
The help center is right here.
Under the settings.
Yep.
Okay.
Sites help. Every page is going to have an option for help. Again, to create a new page, click on Create New Page. Go from there. You can preview it. Remember, because right now I'm logged in, so it looks like the manager. This is what it looks like to a regular person. Oh yeah, these things are mobile friendly, kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah. They don't look great, but this is what it would look like. It does work. It's just not great. What other questions do you guys have before we wrap up with this workshop?
So to use this, you have to have a Gmail account?
Yep, and you can do it on your own personal Gmail account
Yeah.
too. That's a good point. You don't have to just do this for Brevard stuff. You guys have access to sites too with your standard Gmail accounts. This is not just a special thing for the Google Apps for Education version that we use. One thing to keep in mind is that there is a limit to how much content you can host on your site. So if you're going to upload things directly to the site, it will run out of space at some point. It's a pretty large number, but there is a limit.
To do the linking.
That's why it's great to embed from other places, like YouTube. If you embed from YouTube, you're not going to have an issue with using up that space on your site because it's not hosted on your site. It's hosted on YouTube. If you embed things from your Google Drive at Brevard, you've got limited space on your drive at Brevard, so you're never going to have to worry about running out of space there. And if you're always linking from your drive, then you're never going to need to worry about space. I probably have used zero space on this site because everything is hosted somewhere else except for this banner image. That's the only thing I uploaded, and these images. But all those videos are embedded from somewhere else.
But if you embed from somewhere else, and it's something that's gonna be archived, like our portfolios, like we were embedding from Vimeo, Vimeo changes anything or all of a sudden isn't free, then that will affect or does something, and we go to our portfolio 5 years later, then all of a sudden that's not there. So we ran into that because the sites that you're not responsible, for change all the time and start
Yep.
charging money. And so, but that was probably more for just when you're gonna archive something and say the evaluators are
Well,
coming
and
in 7 years.
it's even more true if you're embedding someone else's content if you're embedding a video that you do not own, but you love it, and you can do that. There's nothing illegal about embedding somebody else's video. They posted it to YouTube. You're completely allowed to use it and share it with people. They've made it shareable. They can control that in YouTube the same way you can. So if they've made it shareable, you can share it on your site. You can embed it. But if that owner of that video takes that video down, you're going to have a big gray space with no video on your site at some point. It doesn't keep it there permanently. It only pulls it from the site that it's being hosted on. But if it's your content, you own it, and you know it's there, then it's obviously not as big a problem. But if you're hosting other people's content, you may run into that occasionally.
And as far as video, YouTube is a Google product.
Yes.
So,
Well, yeah, let me show you guys that, because that
if
is
you're
something.
if you're linking to video, I would go with YouTube as opposed to.
Yeah, so like when I want to insert a video or anything from Drive, I told you guys it was easy, right? Insert, and I've got all these options. I can insert a link, an image, other things here. I like lines sometimes too. Gadgets. So those Instagram and Twitter feeds, those are gadgets. Remember I told you about that? I actually went into more gadgets, and I can add a gadget that they actually feature some of these already. You notice they're all Google related. So if you want to embed a calendar, you can embed a calendar, and then when you update your calendar, it'll update on the Google site too. And they've got all these that are kind of, there's PayPal, so if you want to collect money. Ooh, I ran out of,
I just
yeah.
thought of something awesome that I could do.
Yeah, congratulations.
But I used special gadgets that I found online for the Twitter and Instagram, and I just basically set it up on their service. They gave me a URL to plug in, and I paste the URL in there, and bam, shows up.
So if you
It's
want,
cool.
can you kind of cheat the system, whereas if I made a video and put it on YouTube and didn't share it with anybody except myself, and then I can embed it, it wouldn't take up my.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Absolutely, it won't count towards your space if you put it on YouTube. That's what I've done on all these videos.
But if you didn't share it with anybody except yourself, then nobody will be able to see it on that page.
Exactly.
There's like
Yeah.
never-
Yeah, whatever
Okay.
permissions you set up for
There's-
YouTube is what's going to
Okay.
show up on your page too.
There's
Yep.
like an only me setting, there's an only people with the link setting, and then
Okay.
there's the public, which lets anybody be able to, it just turns up in a search.
Now this one over here, these are all the Google stuff, the Google things that you can link to your page. Again, calendar, you can do it a couple ways. They've got a gadget for that, or they just have a nice little one-click option here for you. From Drive, you see all these options as well. If you've got an image in Drive, you can embed that image. If you've got a video in Drive, which is what we're doing with Teachers Ed, we're now having the students, instead of uploading them to Vimeo, they upload them to their Drive. They never have to worry about space, and they can just bing, bang, boom, they
So
click it.
you would wanna do that with yours if you don't want anybody else to see it. It's all in-house in your home site,
in your
so
own
you don't have to
email.
pull and you've
The
got
only
enough
problem
stuff
for
to draw.
students if would need to have their own email account, because once they graduate from Brevard, that's gonna go away.
Yeah,
Once they sign up for an alumni account, but that's just.
Yeah, and there's a process for that with Betsy. They actually they give ownership to the Teachers Ed department before they leave, and then the Teachers Ed department has an archive version of that
we
site.
rename it
Yeah,
to something else, and so they can't touch it anymore. But they go away with their own, and they can
yeah,
do
they've got a
whatever.
copy for themselves.
Puppy dog pictures, or whatever.
But yeah, I mean, Google stuff is all really simple. You can even, add albums and ways to have a hangout with people. I mean, cool communication tools from Google. On top of just, there's your YouTube option. So if you want to embed a YouTube link, you just paste the link. There's not even an embed code anymore. You just take the share link, you paste it in there, and they will find it and put it right into your page. It's pretty cool.
It seems a lot more user friendly. Like I looked into Journo Portfolio or something like that, and it just wasn't as easy to drive.
Now, if you like,
manage it.
yeah, it's gotten better, and they keep getting better and better too. If you want 3-column layouts, you want different kinds of things, like you were talking about with My Brevard, you kind of have different places to put things. You can change the layouts too. I've got this on just a big, wide, single-column, 1-column layout.
And so for when so you don't have to use a template to do that. You can just go in and design each page. Okay.
Yeah, this is kind of like you're creating your own template at this point. The template might already have it set, and then if you don't like it, you've got to go back and change it. That's why I say templates can be kind of a nice thing, but they can also be sort of a pain sometimes because they sort of keep you set with what you picked, unless you have to then you go back and revert. So, any other questions so far? Anything up here? This is your HTML for those of you who like to get into the code, do things there. Eee, that's scary. Get out of that.
It is scary.
What do you guys think? You gonna go back and make a fun site?
This weekend.
It's pretty fun because there really are so many different things you can do. I mean, I like tools like this because it just lets you, create, and sort of the sky's the limit in terms of what you want to create with these kinds of sites. And the fact that it works really well with all these other tools just makes it even more fun because you can create content in one place and then make it shareable in other places and build your own little environment.